Joining me now on set is Rebecca Roiphe, who is joining me as well. So Rebecca, you know, this was a Roger Stone who just came out a few moments ago and was very confident. This did not seem like a man whose house was just raided a few hours ago. He is standing firm. What stood out to you with this indictment?
Well, I mean, I think the facts are really stunning. The most significant fact in there is that a senior campaign official was directed to coordinate with Stone to get those WikiLeaks emails dumped. And so, you know, there aren't that many people who that could be. It has to be somebody who can direct a senior campaign official. So, I mean, possibly Manafort, but it seems to me most likely that person is the president of the United States.
If you are the president's personal lawyer at this point, how do you protect him? What is your biggest concern based on what you know?
I think your biggest concern is what is coming down the pike, because, you know, these are all process crimes. And as, you know, Sarah Huckabee Sanders said, you know, they're crimes that have nothing to do with the president. And the crimes themselves have nothing to do with the president because they are lying. But the underlying facts, the things that he was lying about, have everything to do with the president and the campaign. He can't distance himself from his senior campaign advisors, and he can't distance himself from Stone. So I would be very worried about what it is that Mueller knows that's behind the facts.
Based on just the information, because it has been quite a windy road and we get things from different directions, but based on what we know at this point, is there anything that can directly incriminate the president or give us reason to believe that the president could be in trouble here?
There is no direct evidence yet. There is no direct evidence. But in this indictment, there is no way that Robert Mueller would have brought this indictment without a lot of evidence to back it up. And so I think there's more to come. He has more. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought this indictment. What that is, we just don't know yet.
What would you say are the sort of severity of the charges at this point that they could be facing?
That who could be the president? The
president could be facing.
Well, I mean, that, you know, that's the million-dollar question. So is, you know, that he keeps saying no collusion,
yes.
and there was that whole weird backpedaling that Rudy Giuliani made that said maybe somebody was colluding, but it wasn't the president. No, nobody was colluding. So everybody keeps throwing out that term collusion. That's the conspiracy to defraud the United States, or conspiracy to engage in other kinds of crimes that involve the hacking and so forth. So the question is, how far does that conspiracy extend? I mean, it seems we already have the indictment of the Russians, so we already know that somebody was trying to defraud the United States. The question is, who was working with those people? And now it seems, not from the charges that were brought against Stone, but from the underlying facts that, you know, Roger Stone and person number 2 and person number 1, who are Jerome Corsi and Randy Credico are actually involved in this, in this conduct in some way. How extensively, we don't know yet.
But, you know, when we talk about cooperation, Jerome Corsi, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Rebecca, Jerome Corsi publicly turned down a plea agreement, so he's not cooperating, is our understanding. It does not appear Roger Stone is in any position wanting to cooperate. So if you know this, and you're Mueller and his team, and you know these folks are not going to cooperate, you might not get anything more, why go through this, indict them, and bring them out like this? What do you have to gain knowing that they're not going to cooperate with you?
Well, you have people who committed crimes. I mean, prosecutors are, you know, in some ways it's strategic. They're building their case and they're doing their best to build their case. But also, if while they're building their case, they find evidence that somebody committed a crime, they charge those people. And that's what they should do. And especially, you know, I know that these are crimes that are not, you know, they don't have to do with collusion, but they are significant, serious crimes, and they undermine the way the criminal justice system works. If you're threatening witnesses, as Stone has accused of doing in this indictment, and if you're lying to Congress and lying to the FBI, those are serious crimes, and there's no way a prosecutor would ignore that once they got evidence that that was happening.
You know, it's interesting. In this, you talk about person 1 or person 2, but in that little wiggle room where potentially it could be the president, we don't know and have any, why not name that person, say person 1 or person 2? Is there any reason to the lingo in that?
I mean, I think the language is significant. So he uses the passive tense in every other part of the indictment. He uses, as you say, person number 2, organization number 1. And and lawyers are trained not to use the passive tense. So if he's doing it for a reason. And I think it's a reason related to why he refuted the BuzzFeed story, which is he is not ready to reveal whatever is behind that statement yet. And he doesn't want to even give a clue. And therefore, it's going to remain behind a black curtain until, I think probably until that final report comes out. But certainly he's just not ready yet. He hasn't developed the evidence as far as he wants to develop it. So it's not coming out yet.
It seems so much that Roger Stone is taking a very different approach than Paul Manafort. He's really fighting this and being very public. When he meets that federal judge in D.C. next week, do you think they could slap a gag order and tell him don't talk?
Oh, absolutely, they could. I mean, there have been battles between defendants and courts over gag orders, and I could imagine that playing itself out with Roger Stone because he's such a personality and he's so insistent on pursuing things the way he wants to pursue things that I could see that turning into a battle. But, maybe under these circumstances, Roger Stone might behave differently because the consequences are so high.
I want to actually play for you Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, business associates. I want to play for you what he had to say about Roger Stone in connection to the president. It's actually in a documentary called Get Me Roger Stone.
Roger's, relationship with Trump has been so interconnected that it's hard to define what's Roger and what's Donald. While it will be clearly a Trump presidency, I think it's influenced by a Stone philosophy.
Hard to tell what's the difference between Roger Stone and President Trump. If you're President Trump, I know I asked you this earlier, but what is your biggest fear having Roger Stone coming out like this? Well, I can't imagine it really helps your case.
Yeah, no, I mean, and he can't do what he's been doing all along, sort of with Flynn and a little bit even with Manafort, trying to say, well, they weren't really that important. They only worked on the campaign for a little while.
Yeah.
The trees are falling around him. I mean, these are his close cohort who are being indicted for crimes that, while maybe don't have to do exactly with collusion, are circling around that investigation. And so why is Roger Stone lying about these fundamental facts that have to do with, working with Russia to undermine the American election? And, if I was the president, I would be concerned because I can't distance myself from Stone. So the only thing I can do, I suppose, is try to say there's no collusion, no facts of collusion. And that's what Roger Stone came out saying on the steps of the courthouse. I assume that the president will echo that, but it's increasingly not very effective given what the substance of those lies are about.
Rebecca Roiphe, so grateful you're here on set, and I hope you'll stick with us this afternoon. We've got a lot of news breaking this afternoon. Appreciate it, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.